D number 13, For Unto Us in Jesus' Name, chapter 11. It is December 10th, 11:30 a.m. Tuesday morning, Pine Forest Country Inn, Pine Forest, Georgia. Gabe smiled at the young Hannah Brown as she held open the kitchen door for him. He carried 2 milk crates holding 8 gallons of fresh, raw milk. He moved past her and quickly set them on the floor in front of the larger refrigerator. She watched quietly as he promptly put them away. Gathering up the 2 now empty crates, he smiled at her. Are you ready? She nodded. Are those the lunches for Rose? She nodded again. Thank you, Gabe, his Aunt Jody said as she came into the kitchen. He saluted. My pleasure, ma'am, he said in a mock southern drawl. Jody moved forward and pinched his cheeks. Oh, you are just so cute. Gabe laughed. So, tell me again, what are you two going to do? We're going to go to the center to drop off the lunches and then head to the store to pick up Iris's cake and then go back to my house to help Mom do whatever she needs doing and to keep Iris occupied and hold little babies. Jody frowned. Oh, I wish I could come with you to hold those babies, but I can't get away until Wendy gets here. Who's Wendy? My new day manager. Oh, cool. Well, Aunt Jody, Gentian and Isaiah will still be there for you when you get there. Jody nodded and then smiled at Hannah. Well, you and Gabe have a good time, and I'll see you in a few hours. Hannah smiled. Okay. Gabe gave a quick tug on a lock of Hannah's hair. Okay, let's head out. He smiled. See you later, Aunt Jody. He turned to the 2 people working on lunch for the inn guest. Hi, and bye, y'all. Bye, Gabe. Tell Iris we said happy birthday. I will. Gabe and Hannah went out the back to the side drive where he'd parked his truck. Once she was seated in the passenger seat, he looked over at her. You look really nice today, Hannah. She smiled. Thanks. Is that a new outfit? She looked at him funny. Yeah. Everything I have is new. Oh, yeah, he grinned and then nodded. I like it. The outfit? Well, yeah, but I was talking about the attitude. I like that you weren't too shy to remind me about that. She nodded. I don't think I'm shy. I just don't talk a lot, unless I have something to say. I think that's awesome. There's a lot of people in this world that should learn to do that. Hannah looked over at the boy, mostly to see if he matched what he looked like online. She'd spent hours and hours watching everything on his website, and then she'd search for other video about him and Taylor. She was intrigued by him because he'd been shot and kidnapped. She'd watched those videos over and over, and she'd watched everything she could find on Taylor. Gabe glanced over at her. Are you okay? She nodded. Yes, how's Taylor? I've been waiting for her to call me. He frowned. Yeah, me too. She finally called me last night in the middle of the night. She's been super busy and hasn't had any time to call anyone. By the time she finds time, it's the middle of the night for us over here in Georgia. Well, what time is it in California? Well, they're 3 hours behind us. So like right now, it's almost noon here. So over there, it's only 9 in the morning and she's at school. And then when she finally gets home after all of her activities, it's 9 or 10 at night for her, which means it's midnight or 1 in the morning for us. But I told her it didn't matter what time it is, call me. So she finally did. Hannah nodded, and Gabe smiled at her. You could text her, though. When she gets out of class, she'll read the text, and she might have time to respond, and that way you can at least touch base with her. Okay, I'll do that, Hannah said with a nod. You know how to text? She nodded. So, what school does Taylor go to? She goes to Brookside High School. It's a private school in Newport Beach, California. Private means only certain people can go there, right? Yes, it's not funded by government money, so not just anyone can enroll. The people who go there have to pay a lot of money. Well, what kind of school is Pine Forest High School, where Charlie goes? It's a public school. It's not so bad as public schools go. I graduated from there last year. You're 18, right? Yep. She was quiet a few moments. The defects people say that I have to go to school. Gabe nodded, wondering what he needed to say to help her. So, are you happy about that or not so happy? She shrugged. I don't know. I have to go to Pine Forest Middle School on Friday and take an assessment test, like to see what grade I need to be in. They got in touch with the online school I was doing, and it says I was doing 10th grade level English and reading and history, but only 5th grade level in math and science. So they don't know where to put me. So I have to take an assessment test on Friday. Well, what grade what grade are you hoping they'll put you in? She sighed. I just want to be around kids my own age. And you're 13, right? Yes. Then that's 7th or 8th grade. And I think if you're so smart in English, we should hope for the 8th grade, because I have a feeling you'll catch up in the math and science once you have a teacher to teach you, because maybe even get a math tutor to help you catch up. It's hard to learn math by yourself. So even to do what you've done is good. You must be really smart. She smiled. I like to read. I think that's why I'm good in English. Gabe nodded. Probably. Anyway, if you end up in 7th or 8th grade, you'll have Matt Stewart there to help you meet people. What grade is he in? He's in the 7th. And if you end up in high school, you'll have Charlie to help you. So either way, you're going to be okay. Charlie and Matt are really popular, and if they say you're their friend, everyone, or I guess almost everyone, will also want to be your friend. Why almost? He shrugged. Well, because people can be snotty or mean. That's just the way it is. But if they are, you make sure you tell the apples and tell Charlie and Matt, and we'll just nip that in the bud. We won't let anything bad happen to you, Hannah. But we have to know what's going on. We won't let you be a victim, and you won't be, especially if you don't think of yourself as one. Her brow furrowed. What do you mean? Gabe sighed. He may have said too much. Well, I mean, you've had a pretty hard time these past few years. You've had some pretty hard things happen to you. And some people would play victim, like, look at poor little me. I had a horrible life. Everyone be sad for me. Everyone feel sorry for me, because it gets them attention. I wouldn't do that. I sure don't want people to feel sorry for me. I just want to be normal. Gabe smiled at the phrase that he so often used. Why would people do that? Hannah asked. I mean, why would they want people to feel sorry for them? He shrugged. Well, like I said, I think it's for the attention they get. They're actually looking for love or something to fill the emptiness that they feel. They don't feel that there's only one thing that can fill that emptiness, and they don't realize that there's only one thing that can fill that emptiness, and that's Jesus. And once you establish that connection to him, the emptiness goes away, and you don't need anyone to feel sorry for you or give you attention. He heals your heart and mind. Gabe turned and smiled at her as they pulled into the center. But sometimes we revert back to victimhood without even realizing it. He was now speaking to himself as he reached that realization. Hannah nodded as she tucked her hair behind her ears. He smiled. Let's go in and look around for a minute and see what kind of stuff Rose has going on in there. I hear she has a whole bunch of fun things planned right up until Christmas. Hannah opened her door and Gabe took the lunches from her. I'll get those, he said. She smiled. He was so nice. Everyone was so nice. But he just said not everyone was nice. She wondered what made some people nice and some people like Carl, or like her own mother for that matter. Her father too. One thing for sure, they didn't have Jesus in their lives. New scene. It is still December 10th. It is now 1 p.m., but it's Pacific Daylight Time, Tuesday afternoon. Ronald Clark home, Huntington Beach, California. Grandmaster Eric Kino and Ricky and Mark and Ronnie stood on the sidewalk just outside of the Reverend's old 2-story home, watching as across the street a large construction crew worked on removing the tall chain-link fence that had been erected between the church and the old motel property. At first, they thought they might just tear the fence down using heavy equipment, but they didn't want to damage the tarmac of the parking lot. So this group of 20 men armed with high-powered drills and fence cutters and muscle were working at an amazing speed. The fence fabric would be rolled up and reused. The hardest part was the fence posts. Still, it was coming down in record time. Also standing on the sidewalk, Melody was looking over the work that had been done on the church as she waited for Logan, who would be arriving any minute. It already looked like a different building. Once the plywood was gone that covered the hole where the stained glass window had been, it was going to be beautiful. All the black mildew stains were gone, and the church looked bright white. They were not going to paint it until the roof could be replaced, and also because it would be raining on and off most of the winter. So new roof and paint would happen in the spring. Still, right now, compared to how it looked just 2 days ago, it was like night and day. 2 beautiful wreaths had been hung on the large double-arched doors. There were new, beautiful ramps placed symmetrically on either side of the large concrete porch area. There were prettily designed solar lights on each post of the ramps. After lunch, the men would put up the two large Christmas trees that had just been delivered on either side of the wide steps. Tomorrow, there will be concrete poured that led from the concrete walkway to the edge of the ramps. Also happening at this minute, 2 men were digging holes to place a beautiful white posted sign in the tiny yard area on the right side of the property. The sign would be glass enclosed, but not a sign that would have to go out and change out the letters manually. It was a video screen that would announce times of meetings, special events, and an uplifting message. Melody's eyes moved from the men putting up the sign to the car that pulled up in front of her. It was Bristol. She pulled up and let down her passenger side window, and Melody smiled and leaned in. "Hey, Bristol, what do you think so far?" "It's amazing. Grandma wants me to come get her and bring her up here to see. I only have an hour for lunch, so let me go get her and I'll be right back." "Okay, awesome. So you work nearby?" "Yes, just a mile away." "What do you do?" "I'm a clerk in an accounting office. I was going to get my degree in accounting, but I had to put those plans on hold because I have to make ends meet. But at least I'm working in my field. Anyway, I'll be right back." Melody nodded and stepped away from the car. And just as Bristol pulled away, Alec pulled up. And he parked just past Ronnie's home and walked up to speak to Mark, greeting Melody as he passed. "Alec," Mark said, "were you successful?" Alec smiled and nodded. "Yes, I was. I walked it through personally. I had to be a little insistent, and that was kind of scary, but I stood firm and I got the permit." He turned and held his hand out to the Kinos. "Mr. Kino, Grandmaster Kino, it's very nice to see you." "You too, Alec. How's life going?" Ricky asked with a smile. "Life is amazing right now, thanks to you and young Eric. Thanks to all of you, actually. And he's doing well, learning fast, and once he gets his degree, there's going to be no stopping this guy," Mark added. "Thank you, sir," Alex said. He turned to the Reverend. "Reverend Clark, nice to see you." "You as well, young man. So what feat did you just stand firm and make happen?" he asked in his slow, shaky voice. Alex smiled. "Mr. Adams thought we might need a permit to have such a large gathering outside the church this evening. So I did the paperwork and got a special appointment, went to City Hall permit department and got it." He held it out. "Who wants it?" "Give it to Reverend Clark," Mark said, "since he owns the church." Ronnie smiled and took the paper. "Well, you guys think of everything, don't you?" "We try," Grandmaster Kino said. "Which reminds me," Ricky said, "Joey has arranged for some security just to keep things safe, and Jason has notified the Huntington Police Department and invited them to come by and have some pizza." "I'm impressed," Ronnie said. "What else do we need to do to prepare for tonight?" "Well, you will only need to welcome the people who show up. Logan will be setting up a sound system, so you won't have to try to speak over a crowd. Welcome them out, have a prayer, and Logan will provide some Christmas music as the children decorate the trees," Eric answered. "Bree has arranged for tables to be set up outside over there," Ricky added, as he pointed to the front part of the now open parking lot. "Jewel is arranging for the pieces to be delivered from several different places to spread the business around and to offer a wide variety. Jewel has also spoken to the church ladies, and they are preparing desserts to bring up here. And she and Bree are taking care of all of the necessities, like plates and forks and napkins. Drinks are being provided by a man in the community, and we'll have large coolers filled with ice for them, and also bottles of water. And Bella and Breeze have already purchased all of the decorations needed for the trees. The men will be putting up the trees soon, and we were just taking a few minutes to rest and digest after lunch. And we will be putting the lights on the trees before everyone gets here. And when is everyone coming? Ronnie asked. Well, we told them 5, but I'm sure they'll be arriving earlier than that. We'll do some decorating first and then eat and enjoy the party and then shoot to clean things up at 8 and be completely done and gone by 9. Ronnie nodded, way past my bedtime. Well, when you get tired, head home and we'll take care of things, Ricky said. It was a spur-of-the-moment thing. I felt like I should invite them to help so that it would be less likely that they'll steal or deface things later. By the time Jason, Joey, and Jeff have arranged security for... By the way, let me start that over. By the way, Jason, Joey, and Jeff have arranged security for a while until the neighborhood gets used to the idea of taking care of the area. And there are some tech guys inside the church right now installing motion detector lights and silent alarms and security cameras. But the idea, Grandmaster Kino added, is to get the community so involved in their area, get them to feel some pride in what they're accomplishing, that they'll protect and take care of their own community. Well, that sounds good when you say it, but that apartment complex is so run down. It's hard for those people to feel pride in their community, Ronnie countered. Ricky nodded. You are exactly right, Reverend, and that's why Bree and I are looking into purchasing the complex. Everyone, except Mark, was surprised by the statement. Ricky chuckled. I know, right? Bree and I drove around down there yesterday. We'll find out more on Saturday, but from what we could see, it's pretty broken down. I'm sure there are units with broken appliances. We saw broken windows, broken doors. We asked Mark to get his real estate attorneys to look into the owners. The place is owned by a group called Oasis Properties, which is pretty much owned by a man named Thomas Wood. He owns over 400 properties in the greater Los Angeles area. Not all of his properties are this bad, but many are. Not only does he not provide healthy, habitable homes, but when something breaks, he charges the renter extra money to pay for the repair, always claiming it was the renter's negligence. Is he willing to sell the property to you? Ronnie asked. Well, we haven't made an offer yet. Of course, we won't let him know who's actually trying to buy the property. We've let the city know that an inspection is needed, and they will inspect and charge him with all kinds of violations and fine him hundreds of thousands of dollars in fees, and then we will swoop in and take the property off his hands for a decent price. Nothing will be dishonest. He actually is breaking the law. He has his tenants living in filth while he has a multi-million-dollar estate in Delhi Point. He has the means to keep his properties up to code, so there's no excuse. It's absolutely detestable. Why he's been able to get away with it for so long makes me suspicious, so he probably has inside connections. But then, so do I. So there's that. Eric Sr. smiled. And then what will you do once you own the property? Well, first, renovate, Ricky said. Help these people have a decent place to live. They're paying their rent. From what I was able to find out so far, only a few of the tenants are seriously behind in their rent. They're all afraid of missing a payment because others have immediately been evicted, and as you know, getting into another place is difficult. After that, as we get to know the tenants, we'll see who God will ask us to bless. But not only in the apartments, on this entire block. Mark nodded. Well, with the church and the motel being renovated and the apartments being renovated, it's a huge start in rebuilding this whole area. Most of the homes down that way, he pointed down the street away from the motel, are fairly decent. Some could use some sprucing up, really just some curb appeal adjustments. Well, we can work on that easily, Eric Sr. said. It won't take much, a simple hand up to upgrade this area. Still, we need to keep in mind that the purpose of upgrading the area is not to upgrade the area. It's to get the people's attention and have them follow our example in faith and love and living in a clean, wholesome, and godly way. He looked around. The landscapers were almost finished with Ronnie's yard, and they had worked miracles. They cut grass, trimmed bushes, edged the yard, and used different colored rocks and pavers to landscape, and actually planted some winter flowers. It was a complete 180 from a few hours ago. He glanced over at the two-story house on the corner that was right next to Ronnie's home. So, Ronnie, what's up with that house? It looks abandoned, and the grass is as high as my knees in some places. Ronnie nodded. That was owned by a woman named Elsa Channing. She died a few years ago. I think her kids live out of state. Every once in a while, they put it up for sale, but it needs too much work. So maybe every 3 months or so, they'll have someone come and clean up the yard. Eric nodded. Well, we'll take care of that today for sure. The yard, I mean. If the house has been sitting empty that long, it looks like a good place for one of Angel Foundation's homes. He turned and immediately walked over to talk to the head yard guy, and Eric shook his head. Hello, Luis. I gotta say, you guys are doing a great job. This yard looks so much better, and the front lawn of the church is perfect. Luis smiled and nodded. We haven't put in the solar lighting yet, but it's actually an easy landscape because it's so small. In the spring, we can do much more. Well, I'll keep that in mind. So, do you have other appointments for today? No, sir, not today. Why? Do you need something else? Eric nodded at the house next door. You think you guys can take care of that? Oh, yes, sir, we can. Wonderful. I'll pay you double what you would normally charge for such a big job. You don't have to do that. I'm just grateful for the work. It will still be doubled and worth it for the last-minute appointment. Have you come up with a plan for the backyard of the church yet? Well, we've measured, and my son and I will draw up some designs, and then we'll need to meet with you to finalize. I understand that you're going to want to connect the backyard of the church to the parking lot in some way. And I know you want a picnic area and an area for playing games or mingling. It's actually a large area since the backyard extends all the way to the street behind. So we will draw up some ideas and then collaborate with you. And again, Mr. Kino, we're grateful for the work. It's been hard getting a foothold and building up clients. Well, I'm glad to assist in that. We're going to have a lot more work coming up for you. But make sure you have enough employees because we like to move fast. And when this is done, we'll recommend you to some of our friends who own commercial properties. Louise smiled. We'll do a good job for you. Thank you so much, Mr. Kino. I'm glad to help, Eric replied sincerely. So, do you live nearby? Louise nodded. Well, not too far, about 15 minutes away. Well, we're having a little pizza party and tree decorating party tonight at the church. You and your crew and their families are welcome to come. Louise offered a large smile. Thank you, sir. I'll let them know. Thanks again, Eric said as he walked back to Ronnie. Well, you truly do act fast, Ronnie commented. I try to. Like you said, I'm not getting any younger. Ronnie sighed, and Eric realized the elderly man was tired. Well, Ronnie, I just want to say thanks for offering your 3 extra bedrooms to the ladies and kids for naps so that they didn't have to drive all the way home. Oh, it's my pleasure. It's nice that they can be of good use to someone, if even for a day. Well, it's been a hard day so far, and it's going to be crazy in a few hours. Why don't you go in and get some rest, too? I assure you, you don't have to stay out here. I'll take care of things. Ronnie smiled. I appreciate your kindness, Eric, and I am tired, and I will take you up on that offer. New scene. Just as Ronnie took his leave and headed into his house, Bristol in her silver Camry pulled up with her grandmother. Eric immediately headed over to open her door for her and help her out of the car. He held her cane for her and allowed her to lean on his arm as he helped the woman onto the sidewalk in front of Ronnie's home. Why, thank you, young man, the woman said. Eric chuckled at the young man, but didn't dare say anything about their ages. It's my pleasure. Let me introduce myself. I'm Eric Kino. Yes, I know, and my name is Christina Palma. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Palma. Call me Christina, and it's a pleasure to meet you, too. So, Bristol is your granddaughter? Eric asked as the young lady came to stand next to her grandmother. Yes, Christina said, smiling proudly. She's my pride and joy. Melody then introduced Bristol and Mrs. Palma to Ricky and Mark and Alec, and then pointed across the street to the motel parking lot. And that guy over there walking around the parking lot like he's lost is young Eric. I mean, that's what we all call him. He's Mr. Kino's son and Grandmaster Kino's grandson. Hold on a minute. What's he doing? Christina asked. I'm not sure, Ricky answered. Young Eric looked up as if he knew they were talking about him, and he trotted over to where everyone had gathered. What's up? He asked. Eric, this is Mrs. Palma and her granddaughter, Bristol. It was Bristol who invited Melody to church Sunday that started this whole thing. Young Eric flashed his brilliant smile and shook their hands. It's so nice to meet you, and I'm so glad you invited Melody. We definitely are also very pleased about that, and that she brought her young man with her. That Logan is a fine boy, Mrs. Palma said. Young Eric grinned. He truly is. He's my cousin, but I think of him as my brother. May I ask, young Eric, what you were doing over there? Oh, well, I was getting the lay of the lot. I think it needs a good pressure washing. Let me try that again. What were you doing over there? Oh, well, I was getting the lay of the lot. I think it needs a good pressure washing and some new lines painted, and I was thinking how we might design the parking spaces to make it the easiest to navigate. And once I figure that out, we'll have it painted. We also don't want the lot to be an eyesore, so we'll do some landscaping around the edges, maybe put in some medians, and eventually build a breezeway from the back door of the church over to the motel, which will be a teen ministry center. And we'll have a gym with a stage and classrooms and a small kitchen and community room and some offices for like counseling, etc. Christina's eyes opened wide and filled with tears. Oh, dear. That is just wonderful. Just wonderful. I never would have imagined such a fine thing. Well, it's going to be really nice once we get finished, young Eric assured her. But things are already looking great inside the church, Melody said. Do you want to come in and see? Oh, I certainly do. Bristol, Melody asked, how much time do you have before you have to be back at work? Only about 15 minutes. Where do you work? Eric Sr. asked. At the Eglin accounting firm. It's only about 1.5 miles away, but I only have an hour for lunch, and I have to get Grandma back home first. And I'll be happy to get her home, Melody said. Really? Of course, no problem. Grandma, is that okay with you? Oh, yes, dear, you run along. Well, that's great. Well, then I can stay about 30 minutes. Well, let's head over and look around. I think you'll be pleased, Eric Sr. said. You guys go ahead, Melody said. I'm waiting on Logan. He's almost here, and he's got Jordan with him. Well, then, I guess I'll wait with you, young Eric said quickly. Grandmaster Kino, Ricky, Mark, Alec, Bristol, and Mrs. Palma walked across the street. Melody and young Eric watched them head inside the church. Grandmaster Kino led Mrs. Palma to one of the new ramps to have her try it out. She stopped and patted the rail and nodded and smiled. Oh, it really does look so nice now, so welcoming, Melody said softly. Young Eric nodded. Yep. It's amazing what a little cleanup, a little landscaping, add some lighting. It's amazing what all that can do. And the wreaths on the doors, they look really nice. Good job. Melody smiled. Thanks. My mother actually made those. She's real crafty like that. I'll have to compliment her when she gets here. She is coming, right? Oh, yes. My mom, Dad, Philip, and Lyle should be here by 3:30 and ready to work. Good. We'll have your dad and the boys work on putting lights on one of the trees, and me and Dad will work on the other tree. And here comes Logan, Melody said excitedly. Young Eric watched her and chuckled. You really like him, don't you? She glanced up at Eric's sincere face. Oh, it's more than like. So much more. Young Eric smiled and nodded. That is very cool. Logan parked just behind Bristol's car and hopped out. He hurried to Melody and grabbed her and gave her a quick kiss, then just stood there holding her hands and smiling at her. What? Melody asked. I'm just so happy to see you. Well, I probably look pretty bad right now. Logan shook his head. I don't know what you're talking about. The paint-splattered jeans, the dirt-streaked T-shirt, the messy bun. It might just be the cutest I've ever seen you. She giggled. And no makeup and bags under my eyes and paint on my fingernails. What were you painting anyway? The men's restroom. It looks so much better now. It's bright and clean. Jordan pulled away from a long kiss with young Eric. So, where is everyone? Well, your mom is downstairs making sure the men who were installing the new stove and refrigerator didn't make any mistakes or hurt her new countertops. Jordan smiled. Her mother was having a blast handling this kind of stuff. And your mom, Logan, is inside taking a nap in one of Reverend Clark's empty bedrooms. Jeffy is also in there resting and nursing Elijah. And Miss Shelley is there sleeping with the kiddos. Reverend Clark also just went inside to rest, and Mrs. Davis went home to rest and nurse little Scarlett, since they don't live that far away. And Mr. Davis is with JoJo over at the motel. They're trying to get an idea of what can be done. And Grandmaster Kino and Mr. Kino and Mark and Mark and Alec are giving Bristol and her grandmother a tour of the progress being made. And Destiny, last I saw her, was in the vestibule rearranging some decorations. Joey was here, but he had to leave. And Miss Breeze, I'm not sure where she went, but her children are napping with their Aunt Bella. I wonder how much rest Mama's getting with those little rugrats, Logan said. Well, especially with Emily. She's like in hyperdrive this week because her birthday's tomorrow. He smiled at his girl. Well, Mel, thank you for that breakdown. I have to unload my car and set things up. Let's do it, young Eric said. I'm in, Jordan said. Melody drew a deep breath. She was ultra tired, but she would keep up, or try to anyway. JoJo came over from the motel to see his brothers. Hey, JoJo, Logan said. How you feeling? I'm good. I'm going back to school tomorrow. Cool. So we're just about to unload my car and set up. They started pulling a keyboard and speakers and extension cords and lights and several large plastic trash cans nested inside each other. They wanted me to get the trash liners. Do you want me to get the trash liners and set those out around the area? Jordan asked. The guys smiled at each other. They're not for trash, Logan said. Okay, I'll bite, Melody said. What are the trash cans for? JoJo grinned. You'll see. New scene. It's still December 10th. It is 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Tuesday afternoon at the Tanner home, Pine Forest, Georgia. Lizzie Tanner sat in her favorite rocking chair with her now 3-year-old daughter in her lap. Lizzie was reading a storybook to little Iris. The book was written by none other than Keegan Tanner, illustrated by Breeze and Sophia Adams, and published by Mackenzie Daly Adams. Once Mickey heard about how Keegan had told the girls stories for years and actually recorded them in a book as a gift for Lizzie for her last birthday, she became obsessed with a line of storybooks for children using Keegan's stories. She began with the stories he already had recorded in the book. After that, Mickey asked him to simply make a voice recording or video whenever he told Iris another story, and she would take it from there. This one he recorded recently, specifically to be read before her birthday party, so it was a rush job since Mickey had just barely come up with the idea to publish the line of children's books. The book was large, 11 by 18 inches, not because it was such a long story, but mostly to accommodate the beautiful pictures that Breeze and her 7-year-old daughter Sophia created. The title, The Birthday Girl, was simple and alluring. Of course, to help parents with their boys, there was another one with the corresponding title and characters for them. Lizzie and Iris gazed at the cover of the book. That looks just like me, Iris said. She does look like you, doesn't she? Lizzie touched the shiny cover. She has dark hair like you, with little curls like you, and big blue eyes like you, and a pretty smile like you. She opened the book and began to read. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who was almost always such a sweet little girl. Her name was Iris, like the flower, because she was beautiful just like the flower. Iris was usually a very good and kind little girl. She loved her mommy and her daddy, and she loved all of her sisters and her brothers. She loved Jesus, and she tried to be kind to everyone like Jesus taught. She didn't cry when it was bedtime, and she picked up her toys and put them away whenever her mommy asked her. Now, Iris had a nickname. She was called the birthday girl, even when it wasn't her birthday, because Iris loved birthday parties. She loved them so much. She loved them this much. Lizzie stopped reading as they took a moment to look at the picture because the artist had drawn a little girl with arms that reached across the entire 2 pages. That's Willy Wong arms, Iris declared. Lizzie gave a soft laugh. Yes, and that's how much I love you. Iris responded by simply pressing the back of her head firmly against her mother's chest. Lizzie stroked her dark curls and turned the page. The birthday girl loved everything about birthday parties. She loved the pretty decorations and balloons. She loved having friends and family come over to play games. She loved the cake and the ice cream. She loved blowing out the candles. But most of all, Iris loved the presents. She loved all the pretty bags and boxes and ribbons. She loved opening them to see what delightful prize was inside. It was just so much fun. It was the best thing ever. And usually Iris opened the presents as fast as she could because she was just too excited and she just couldn't wait to see what was in the next present. It was just so much fun. But this year, Iris felt something a little different. You see, Iris had a friend named Teddy. Earlier in the year, both Iris and Teddy had been invited to Billy's birthday party. And Teddy told her that he couldn't come to the party because his family didn't have enough money to buy Billy a birthday present. And Teddy was so sad that he couldn't go to the party. Iris was also so sad because she cared so much for her friend, Teddy. Then Iris had a big idea. She asked her mommy and daddy if she and Teddy could do some work and get paid some money so that Teddy could buy a birthday present for Billy. Yes, her mother said, you can clean up the playroom and dust the furniture in the living room and water all the flowers in the front yard and sweep the walk. Iris and Teddy's eyes opened big because that sounded like a lot of work. They started right away. They picked up all the toys in the playroom. They put away all the crayons. They stacked up all the blocks, and they put away the puzzles. Next, Iris's mommy gave them special soft cloths that had lemon oil on them. They rubbed the cloths over all the tables in the living room, over and over, to make them shiny. And when they finished the tables, they went outside and had to ask Iris's daddy if he would turn on the watering hose. They took turns spraying the water over all the flowers. It was hard to squeeze the sprayer, and they had to squeeze really hard using both hands. Finally, they each were given a small broom, and they swept the walk. The walk was very long, and they worked very hard. When they finally finished all the work, Iris's mommy started to give them the money, but she stopped. She made a face like this. Iris knew that was her mommy's thinking face. Lizzie stopped and made the thinking face, and Iris copied her, and Lizzie laughed and then continued the story. Then Iris's mommy said, you want to use this money to buy a present for Teddy to give to Billy, right? Yes, ma'am, both Teddy and Iris answered. So how will you get to the store to buy the present? Iris's mommy asked. And Iris and Teddy both frowned because they hadn't thought about that, and they didn't know how they would get to the store. Will you take us? Iris asked. Well, I don't have time, but maybe Daddy will. So the children ran to find Iris's daddy. He smiled as he looked up from his desk. What can I do for you children? He asked kindly. Daddy, we just did a lot of work so that we could make money so that Teddy can buy a present for Billy so he can go to Billy's birthday party, but we need someone to take us to the store and buy a present for Billy, and Mommy doesn't have time to do it, and so Daddy, please, will you do it? The daddy smiled at the children and agreed. Iris and Teddy got in the car and went to the store to buy Billy a present. There were so many toys and books and puzzles to choose from, but finally, Teddy chose a red fire truck. He was just sure it would be the best toy ever. It was big and bright. It was big and bright and had a siren that really worked and lights that flashed. They bought the toy and they got back in the car to drive home, but they didn't go right home. Iris's daddy stopped and bought each of them an ice cream cone. It was yummy. And when they got home, they showed the fire truck to Iris's mommy and sisters and brothers. They were all very happy that Teddy was able to find such a nice gift for Billy. One of the sisters, whose name was Rose, said, "Now you have to wrap it up and put a bow on it." And Iris and Teddy frowned. "Can you help us?" Iris asked. Rose took them to the kitchen table and spread out the wrapping paper. She showed them how to wrap the gift. It took a long time, but finally the children proudly looked at the gift, all wrapped up in paper that had pictures of balloons on it. Last but not least, they stuck a big red bow on the present. Both Iris and Teddy smiled so big. It was a beautiful present, and now Teddy could go to the party. They just had to wait one whole day. The next day, both Iris and Teddy arrived at Billy's party. They both wore their best jeans and their best shirts. Billy's mom welcomed them into the home and told them to place their gifts on the table. They did that very carefully. Iris's gift was in a gift bag. She placed it on the table, then watched as Teddy carefully placed his beautiful big gift next to the bag, and they both stepped back and smiled. They were so excited. They each were given special hats to wear, and they played games with all of the other children. There were a lot of children. They all laughed and played games and had so much fun. Then it was time for cake and ice cream. And everyone sang the happy birthday song to Billy and watched as he made a wish and blew out his candles. And they all gobbled up their cake and ice cream. And finally it was time for Billy to open his presents. Teddy and Iris were so excited they couldn't stop smiling. The kids were all noisy, and Billy opened the first gift. It was a game. He smiled, set it down, and reached for the next gift. "Wait," Billy's mom said. "Who was that from?" "It was from me," a boy said. "What do you say?" Billy's mom asked him. Billy smiled at the boy. "Thanks," he said quickly, and reached for the next gift. He opened 2 more presents before he reached for Iris's bag. She was bursting with excitement. He looked into the bag and pulled out a dinosaur. He looked at it, smiled, and put it back in the bag. "Thanks," he said without even looking at her. Iris frowned. It makes sounds and moves when you say stuff," Iris explained. Billy smiled. "Cool," he said. He pulled it back out of the bag and looked a little closer at it. "It has directions," Iris said. "It tells you what to do. You can make him roar and laugh and stuff." "Great, thanks," Billy said, as he quickly put it back into the gift bag and reached for the next present. Iris felt disappointed. She thought that Billy would really love her gift to him. Sorry. She sighed. He reached for the big present wrapped in balloon paper with a big red bow. It looked so big as it sat on Billy's lap. Iris and Teddy looked at each other and smiled. It looked amazing sitting there. They'd worked so hard at wrapping the fire truck, and they were proud of their work. Billy didn't take time to look at the wrapping at all. He ripped the paper and bow away in 1 second. He held the fire truck up and looked at it. He smiled. "Thanks." "Who is that from?" Billy's mom asked. "It's from me," Teddy answered softly. "Thanks, Teddy," Billy said again. He dropped the fire truck onto the floor and reached for the next present. Iris frowned. Teddy frowned. They didn't feel excited anymore. They didn't feel happy anymore. They didn't feel happy anymore. When the party ended, they were quiet as they left and went to their homes. At home, Iris's daddy asked her why she seemed so sad, and Iris shrugged. "I don't know, Daddy. I think it was because the people who gave presents to Billy were really excited to give him their presents, but Billy wasn't real excited to get them." Her daddy frowned. "Do you think maybe he was excited but not very grateful?" Iris frowned too. "Yes, but he said thank you, but I don't think he really meant it." "Do you think it's important that he really is thankful for the gifts he receives?" "Yes." "Why?" Because Teddy worked very hard to earn money to buy that present, and then he picked out the best present, and then it was so hard to wrap it in the paper, and it was so big and pretty, and we were excited to give it to Billy. So, what do you think Billy should have done to show you how thankful he was for the gift? Iris put on her thinking face. Go slower, she finally said. So you think that if he went slower, he would take time to truly appreciate the gift and make the giver feel good about the wonderful gift he'd been given? Iris smiled. Yes, I think so, Daddy. And maybe if there wasn't so many gifts, he wouldn't have to go so fast. Her father smiled in surprise. Oh, very good, Iris. Sometimes, if we have too many gifts at one time, we don't really appreciate them. Maybe you can remember these things when it comes time for your birthday again. Iris smiled. I will remember. And sure enough, she did. When it was time for Iris's birthday, she only invited a small number of children, and she hugged each person and thanked them for coming as soon as they walked into her house. And she opened each present slowly and complimented the pretty wrapping paper or bag or bows. And she took a few minutes to really look over the gift and then ask questions about it. And she placed the gift down carefully, and she got up and went to the giver and hugged them and thanked them sincerely. And when she was finished opening her gifts, she thanked everyone again. More importantly, when the party was over, Iris felt happy. She wasn't happy because of the gifts she'd been given or because she was the center of attention during her party. She was happy because she knew she had helped the other children to also feel happy. And giving to others is the happiest feeling of all. Lizzie turned to the last page and read the final words printed across a beautiful picture of Jesus sitting in a chair with children surrounding him, listening to him speak. She read, Our Father in heaven gives us so many presents that we forget to tell him how grateful we are for them. I hope he doesn't get sad when we forget to say thank you. Do you know what was the greatest gift of all? That's right. Our Father in heaven sent his son Jesus into the world to help us. Jesus was the greatest gift of all. Lizzie slowly closed the book and lovingly ran her hand over Iris's head. Did you like the story? Iris nodded. Yes. Read it again. Lizzie smiled. We don't have time. It's almost time for everyone to come to your birthday party. I hope we don't have too many people coming, Iris said. Lizzie laughed and hugged her daughter. Well, our family alone is very big, and of course Aunt Jody and Uncle John, and Aunt Lisa and Uncle Chaz and their kids are coming, and Mrs. Murphy and Lucas. But we don't have too many little ones coming. Just you and Ava and Zoe and Jimmy and Everett. Come on, sweetie. Let's go check on the babies and see if Gabe and Hannah are finished blowing up the balloons. Iris jumped down off her mother's lap and went running through the house. Gabe, are you ready for my birthday? Gabe let go of the balloon he'd been blowing up, and it whooshed through the air. He swooped Iris up and swung her around. I'm ready. Are you ready? I'm Weddy. How old are you again? Was it 20? She giggled. No, I'm free. Free? You're not free. You're worth about $1 at least. He set her up on his shoulders. Let's go see if anyone is coming up the driveway. She grabbed him under his chin and pulled to the left. No, this way. I want to find Hannah. Where is Hannah? Hannah is helping Violet with the babies, and we're not going up there because the babies might finally be asleep. Lizzie stood in the kitchen doorway, smiling at her son and daughter. Gabe smiled at her. You okay, Mom? She nodded. I'm just a little tired. Oh, Gabriel, I'm going to miss you so much. Is you going away again, Gabe? Iris asked sadly. Yes, but not until after Christmas. Until then, let's have lots and lots of fun, starting today. Okay? Okay, she yelled, pulling his chin to the right, and he turned to the right. No, go the other way, Iris said. Well, then you have to pull me the other way. You're in control. Pull me which way you want to go. She pulled his chin to the left, and he went to the left, but she didn't let go, so he kept going in circles. And finally, she got the hang of it and directed him all over the house and out the front door, and they stopped playing, though, when a car pulled up the drive. It was Rose. She pulled up and waved at Gabe. Just the person I wanted to see. Come help me get the wheelchair out of the trunk, and then get Jericho out of the back seat and into the chair. You brought Jericho? Cool, Gabe said as he set Iris down. Go see Mommy, he said as he ushered her back inside and then headed down to the car. Yeah, I felt sorry for him and decided we could make this happen. We could set him up in a corner somewhere where his leg won't stick out in everyone's way. Gabe opened the trunk and pulled out the wheelchair. Rose opened the back door. Gabe smiled. Hey, Jericho, did you hear that? We can stick you in a corner somewhere. I heard. I didn't mean it like that, and you know it, Rose said. Jericho smiled at her. Gabe looked over the situation. Jericho sat by the door, his leg up on the seat. Okay, so if I lift you under your arms, can you use your good leg to push yourself out the door? Yes, if you just help me get to a standing position, I can maneuver into the chair. Gabe lifted, Jericho helped, and they accomplished the task easily. He kept his leg up while Rose adjusted the elevated leg rest extension on the wheelchair that kept his leg out straight. She leaned over him. You good? He smiled. I'm in heaven. Gabe tapped the arm of the wheelchair. Now, I just need to go get the wheelchair ramp out of the garage. Be right back. Jericho and Rose watched Gabe as he hurried away. He's a good guy, Jericho said. I know you're going to miss him. I don't know how we'll live without him being around, Rose said softly. Well, when I get better, I'll help out around here, and so will CJ. It's not just all the physical stuff he takes care of. It's, well, I guess it's his light. It shines so bright. Jericho nodded. It does seem a little darker when he's not around, but we're going to have to learn to shine a little brighter ourselves because we can't depend on Gabe's light. You're right. And really, Grandmaster Kino says, don't try to be like him. Try to be like Jesus. He is the light. I'll keep trying, Jericho said softly. I will too, Rose said as Gabe came back carrying a large metal ramp. He set it over the porch steps and still had to work very hard to get Jericho up the stairs. Gabe was breathing hard. You're a lot heavier than my mom. I'm sure I have her by at least 100 pounds, Jericho said. Thanks, Gabe. I appreciate the help. It was worth it to have you here at the party. Let's go find a corner, Rose giggled. They entered the home where every room was filled with streamers and balloons and birthday signs, which Lizzie was big on. The large kitchen table had both inserts in and a special purple tablecloth. The cake was giant and beautifully decorated, thanks to Taylor. There were hats and noisemakers and bunches of goodies and also good for yous, a term Gabe had started when he was a kid. After Jericho was settled in the den, where much of the fun and games would take place, the house filled up pretty quick. Iris wore her purple party dress, and all the other children were also dressed up nicely. Pics were posed for and taken. Gabe told his mother, because she'd said earlier that she was tired, to go sit while the other ladies and he would take care of the kids' part of the party. He got Erilyn Stewart's help. She was much older than Iris at age 7 and was very sweet to participate and kind of led the group of younger children in the games, along with the help of her brother, Matt, who was 12. Charlie Stewart and Lucas Murphy, who were both 14, and 13-year-old Hannah, chatted together, filling Hannah in about school and telling her about their own families. But Gabe wasn't having it. He made them get up and participate in some of the games. A wild game of Duck, Duck, Goose was played as the adults chatted and watched and laughed and videoed. Next, the men became fully involved as they became the horses for a race. And Keegan with Iris, Chaz with Erilyn, John with Jimmy, CJ with Zoe, Nick, one of two of the dads who showed up to the party, had his daughter Ava on his back, and Bud, Everett's dad, had him on his back. There wasn't room for them all to run at the same time, so each horse was timed by Jody as they ran a course. There were guards, namely Charlie, Matt, Hannah, Lucas, and Gabe, at the checkpoints to make sure they touched their points. They had to touch the refrigerator in the kitchen, and then the front door, and then the mirror on the wall in the living room, and the dictionary on the shelf in the dining room, and finished by touching Jericho's cast. It was a blast. Lizzie and Lisa and Jody and Rebecca watched and laughed and talked about how much they appreciated their men taking time to play a silly game at a little girl's birthday party. Rose and Violet, Lily and Daisy, and Lena nodded as they listened to the women's conversation. They had to smile at how blessed they were to have the men in their lives, the fathers and boyfriends that they did. So very blessed. And that is the end of chapter 11.